it's like the old saying is, in sports, you usually don't remember the season you didn't win the big one or do something huge. Nobody remembers those seasons, right? But when something huge has happened or you won a great title, well, everybody remembers that season. Right? Yeah. So I get what you're saying, yeah. Many people have to have a great experience or an overwhelming experience like that with characters to keep that memory flowing later, right? Like if you talk to them about a specific character, they might be able to say the specific character and they'll literally name you off events they can remember of the character. And then maybe in an attempt of what they thought the character was about in general. And most of the time, that won't really fit the reality of what was actually gamed in, but
yeah, they'll remember the highlights, and I remember doing this, and do you remember when I did this to your character? And so those moments definitely stick out. And I have a really terrible memory, so I'm very much the same way. And I feel bad sometimes I don't even remember campaigns. It's not because they weren't good campaigns. I'm just I got Swiss cheese for a brain when it comes to memory. So
well, to me, it's when you catch me. Like if you catch me on the wrong morning and say, "What about that campaign?" I'll be like, "What campaign?" But if you mention it to me that night, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that one. Let's talk about it." And memories will. I'm in your zone, but at times I'm. It depends where the hit is when you ask me questions, right?
Like, yeah, if there's enough triggers to get that memory flowing, exactly. Yeah, boom, it comes back to me. Like my wife will do that to me a lot. She'll be like, "Well, don't you remember when you had that Sunday campaign?" I'm like, when on earth did I run a Sunday campaign? Like, oh yeah, I ran like 5 of them. I totally forgot about that.
Could have been. She could have said Tuesday campaign. You might have went. They were Tuesdays, weren't they? No.
I depend on my wife for my memory. She's like a lock trap. Anything that goes in there stays in there, which can be good and bad. But yeah,
I say it depends on where you focus in life. If you got the time to keep your head straight, good. If you're a person who runs the games or gets into gaming, your head will be in 50 million places. Like it's hard to keep track of things to a degree. So again, we talk a little prep. Keeping track between sessions, at least taking notes as a DM, is so necessary. But we would both agree that the prep coming into the campaign is the real prep work, right? Like everything beyond when the game starts, you have we talked about prep to improvise, right? And then you structure so much of the game, right? You at least structure to the point where you have a path to go from that beginning to the end of the campaign. And maybe you do have some end requirement. It's not so much a requirement, but a possibility. Yeah, and if you're an open-minded DM willing to allow the story to go wherever it's going to go, you put in possibilities, not requirements. I recently made a video about that absolute stuff, right? Like just being absolute about things. Like say having an item where I can remember a group, the DM had an item that was required to take to the end and finish the campaign off. And they also had a bottle of this acid that would destroy anything. Well, they agreed as a group that the book was evil. They didn't take the hints that he threw that well. And they took the bottle of acid and poured that over the book. And they destroyed it, and he ended the campaign.
They jumped on the eagle's back and flew to Mount Doom.
But if he was now, you might say, well, why is he forced to stop? He just doesn't have other work done, and he doesn't have other work to improvise, right? So he's stuck. He's done. That's campaign's over. In my opinion, that's why you don't build requirements in like that, right? Like in my game, it would be like this. Yeah, if you have the item, the path is going to be, easier. If you don't have the item, you're going to regret not having the item. At least that's not saying the game is going to teach you that, but I'm pretty sure on just the way the game is going to be ran, you're going to feel like you're being taught that, right? Like this path is going to be maybe more encounters or more challenges or more whatever, right? Traps, puzzles that are going to get in your way to get to the end. And then the way you're going to have to end the game is it's going to be more challenging. Now, without that item, you can't just easily destroy that thing. So now you got to find the other harder method or two or make one up where you find a way to destroy the thing without the item that you had originally.
Yeah,
that's over in the game.
Those campaigns with like the MacGuffin, like the Lord of the Rings with the Ring, or like the Chosen One sort of theme. There's problems with those. Like you said, they destroy the item or they lose it, or there's all kinds of possibilities for things that can go wrong with that. Especially if someone's like written a novel worth of outline for, like 16 sessions down the road, what this item's going to do. So that could be a problem. I like what you're saying about possibilities. The thing with the chosen one is, what if that player just decides to not show up anymore? What if that character dies, or
come on, like
that doesn't work. I've seen that so many times, and it's probably in game so much because it's in literature, it's in especially a lot of the fantasy movies, like the sci fantasy movies, whatever. That's a common theme. So I think it's just in people's subconsciouses, when they're planning out their game campaigns. I try to stay away from that. Because I've just seen it fall flat on its face so often.
The form of storytelling that we do is not the same of that of a novelist, right? They can control the story completely, and there's no qualm. They're not doing it wrong at all. There's no such terms as railroading, nothing. When you get to our game, our form of storytelling, if you try to apply some of the forms of storytelling from novelists and stuff like that, you're going to fail. Because the game is not meant to have such requirements. And players always want to prove a point that they can go down left instead of going down the right turn that the adventure, says, hey, you go down this turn to get to that cave, right? Well, they will want to go down the left turn to prove they can go down the left turn. Now, if they get into a game where they know they can do that, here's my personal experience. You hear a lot of people complain about it, and they'll get into a game where the DM has the invisible wall, right? Has 50 reasons why you can't turn left, and it's going to force you down right. The second they get into a game where they're confident they can turn left, even though it says turn right, 90+% of the time they turn right. The second they know, it's almost like I think that's all players really want, right? They just want to know that no matter what part of the game they're in, the DM will let them do anything. Because that's what they think this game is about. Doing anything you want. I can get into this game, and unlike a video game where I have to do this, I can do anything in this game when I get in. That's the huge difference from video games to pen and paper.
And I'm very much like that as a player. It's almost to the point that sometimes I will go be do something that, like you said, if I even feel a little bit of that, I don't know what it is about me, but I guess it's video games. Maybe that's what it is. I do tend to think about video games like, this isn't a video game. That colored wall over there that I can't interact with in like the video game, I can interact with it in a role playing game.
You can take a hammer to it and bust it down where the wall is just going to remain up in the video game. You can destroy the wall and go through it. And you might only find dirt on the other side. And the DM's going, I'm not personally trying to screw you on this, but there's nothing here, right? I can't put the magical room in where there's none. And no matter how creative people are, sometimes if you allow the world to react the way it's supposed to, then sometimes a creative idea rewards you. And sometimes it realistically doesn't reward you. And I think, like as you would say, consequences, right? They should have to be faced where at least, if nothing else, the player learns, like they go through one situation where their great idea gets them a reward, right? And the next one, it doesn't. They gotta learn that, maybe be a little cautious with your outrageous ideas, right? Don't just throw them to the whim, nonchalantly, right? At least try to be a little balanced and reasonable and rational about what you're doing. Consider what you're going to say next sometimes. And then sometimes blurt it out. But and I'm fine with you having the freedom to do that every game you play, right? But understand that you might not be rewarded, and I'm not going to feel the need to reward you for every creative thing you throw at me. I might go, wow, if there was a room on the other side, I'm impressed. I'll even tell the player. I'll make sure that is communicated clearly, right? Oh man, I'm amazed. I like that approach. I like the idea of it. I could see where that could have led to somewhere, right? So I'll make sure that's communicated. But it doesn't mean it leads to anywhere.
You made me think of something too with random rewards. That's the reason that gambling is so addictive, and that's probably why we come back to role playing games. Just because, like you said, sometimes you get rewarded for things, and sometimes there's nothing there, or it's actually a bad choice. So that brings us back probably, and it wants us to make that next decision and just keep going forward.
It's a roll of the dice, right?
Yeah,
as they would say, right? Like it's a roll of the dice, and and where I say be cautious is that old saying is you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them, right? And to me, if you're reasonable, you might come to the conclusion that this outrageous idea is not going to be in your favor, right? At least the attempt to consider it before you blurt it out, I think, would benefit you, right? But it doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean I put a law up and say that's bad playing. Me, as long as you're playing the game right and focusing, any decision you make, bad or good, is not wrong.
Yeah,
right? It's just a decision. And I really drill that to players, right? I have no qualms as a DM. If you're playing the game right, I can't ask for more. If you get in and your character is not coming across too bright, that's on you. Right? If you're making a lot of bad decisions, that's on you.
And we talked earlier about, players putting in work and like their own form of player prep. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but especially with like new players or even old players, if I see that they're trying, that they're maybe not seriously is the word to use, but just if they're trying, they're trying to engage in the game, they're paying attention, that's the sort of thing I really look for in a player. I guess seriously is a good way to put it. Just
but you got to challenge those
they're
people.
Engaged, and we're both on the same page about challenging them. That's part of the reason they, like you said, they come back, because it's something to make them think, to make them really think on their feet. Like, well, what am I going to do right now? I have no idea. Well, what else does that? It's fun to be able to sit down and be challenged in these things at these tables with people all around you. It's just so many things about role-playing games that are cool to talk about.
Well, you'll get some of these DMs that will see a soft person like that show up who they're maybe not making the best decisions, but they're playing the game the way you'd want them to play as a dungeon master, right? You're like, man, he's focused, or she's focused, right? They're doing everything. They're not making the best decisions, but they're doing everything I want. To me, first off, you got to I will allow them to play as long as they're making that effort. I mean, as long as players are satisfied, if they're putting the effort in, they will improve from session 1 to session 10.
Yeah, they will.
So there's no getting around that. They will improve. Now, the other thing is, you'll get a lot of these DMs that will soft approach with them, and they'll try to, baby glove them in. I go, no, if the person's ready to soak it up, well, then I want to throw the pressure on them. Because they're only going to learn through being challenged. And they need to fall on their face sometimes to learn how not to fall on their face. Right? And it's the only way to do it. And if they're willing to be into it, even if they're having a hard time with interaction, but they come with the energy to try it, and that's what you're looking for, then throw them into the interaction. And if they start like not knowing what to say after so many, that's where I'll have the NPC going, cat got your tongue. And it's to push them. And I promise you, from session 1 of that experience to session 10, if they have a bit of interaction here and there, that's going to be improved. They're going to go through that challenge. They're going to see where they're getting, okay, I should be saying something. And that will be a lesson learned, right? And they'll be a little quicker on their toes, and they'll get a bit more comfortable with it, and they'll build their confidence up through doing something maybe they don't normally do, right? And that's a helpful thing. But if you don't throw those challenges out, if you try to baby step them in, right, it hurts them, in my opinion. It doesn't benefit them. I say baby step a bit in areas where I would expect veteran players to want to communicate with new players like that coming in, putting their best foot forward. A veteran player is already doing that for me, right, on their end. So, and they're going to be more comfortable with the game and their surroundings, and they're going to have a lot more confidence to sit there and have their character have a top-to-back character, right? And so it's a team effort when we bring new people in, right? It's new players coming in, getting, talking to the veterans. And I try to run a format where it's not about the conflict of, conflict between players is for the flavor, not to destroy the game. So there's a level of that exists. And then there's just a level of, hey, you're part of the team. You're not an outsider. Relax. And I think under that perception that I drill the players all the time with their characters in any game I run, just about in long term, it makes it easier for them to look at the new player's character like a team member instead of an outsider looking.
You're talking about new players. Actually, I think we're getting towards probably the end of the conversation, I think, here. But the last couple things I think I want to try to talk about are we talked earlier about how we started playing games. Like you had this GM that it almost sounded like an RPG apprenticeship, which is pretty cool. Where and on the complete opposite spectrum, I was just given like a game, Black Box D&D, for my mother, and me and my brother just figured it out, like trial and error. No one was really showing us what to do for years. Like, I don't think I had really had another DM until like 3rd edition D&D came out, and I went to a gaming club. That was like the first time, like, oh, well, I get to be a player, or like another GM other than my brother. It was really just me and my brother that were DMing. So that's like the first time that I, got a little bit of that apprenticeship, like wisdom handed down sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
You are the opposite. Like, it sounds like you have like a really thriving gaming community up there, lots of players, lots of GMs. You've seen a lot of this stuff going on. You did a lot of playing, and I don't know, why don't you just talk a little bit about that, because I found that fascinating.
All right. Well, thank you. I came into 1989. I was 9 years old. I was born 1980. And the DM that I met was playing with family members of mine. I asked to join the game. It was AD&D 2nd edition. It was new at the time. And what I had thrown at me was a player's handbook, literally chucked across the room, and I was told, come back in a week after you read that. Well, okay, fair enough. I took the book, read it. I mean, over the week, I probably read it like 13 times, trying to know every detail of the game. I came in thinking, I'm going to blow these guys away, right? I sadly had that destroyed, that whole perception when I came in. I found out reading material doesn't really get you too far, right? Until you sit down and play the game, you're just not going to know. And when I sat down and played, I learned a lot of things. And yes, that DM, in later years, into 1991, I had finally decided when I was turning 11, I want to start running a game. And I told my dungeon master, who'd been running my games for years, I want to do this. And he said, okay, well, if you're going to do it, I'm going to force you to do some things before you do that. And he knew I would just bow to whatever he would say on that level, because that was just the relationship we had, and I respected him. And I took his words as gospel for the most part. So I played in 9 mini campaigns right away that were me playing a character of every alignment, because his thing was, he told me, you have to understand what it is you're running. You can't run a game until you understand it. And if you're going to run with alignments and run the game that I'm pretty much running, you're going to have to understand every area. And the way he taught me alignments to this day, I won't go on with that, but I still feel like that was just developing me to understand personalities. After I got through that with him, he would still just come into my games and show me stuff, and that happened for about another year. And between 1989 to 1991, I mean, he would just teach me about DMing the whole time. Like, he would have talks with me after each game just about, where he would say, here's why I did this, and tell me things he wasn't telling everybody else, because the other people weren't interested in running games for the most part, right? So I was telling him, I'd like to do this one day. So he taught me for years, right up to 1991. Then he made me go through those campaigns. And then I started DMing, and I DM'd right up till, I DM'd and played the game until 1996. And I just felt like after he passed away that I could not find a game that would suit me any longer. And I have looked, and I've been open about it. I've never felt like I found one that I would stick to, and so I sort of officially retired in 1996, and I've never played a real game since. I filled in a few times for other DMs with NPCs, or people that were going to become NPCs, and just help, but never stayed in a game after that. So 1996 was the end of my playing years. Yeah, that's my career right there till 2015.
That's very interesting, because I don't think I've heard of people saying that, I'm more of a GM than a player, but they'll still play from time to time. But I think you're one of the few people. I'm trying to think if I've ever heard anybody say that, literally they just decided they're not going to be a player. But it sounds like there's a lot of nostalgia. Which I'm using that word in a positive way. He sounds like a really, almost like a father figure, a role model, upstanding guy to really sort of take you under his wing and, pass on what I would consider like an oral tradition, right? Just like, this is how we do things. These are good ways to do things. And I don't know, I'm envious. I really am. That sounds like a very cool, relationship to have with another GM,
It was a giant community down here where by the time you were coming in as kids, your family was already playing in the community. And it's still to this day very huge and ginormous. Down here, and we have a thing called HalCon. I live in Nova Scotia. Anybody who wants to look that up, go ahead, the Halcon thing. But yeah, and that started because we have such a large community, but our weekends were, for many of the years I was growing up, and still today is, like a con itself, right? Every weekend was a con, like the type you would go run your games at. And, yeah, through the week, I would run my game at 3 or 4 different game shops that I would just pick whichever one I want to go to, and I'd run different campaigns at each one with different players. But yeah, that was a lot of years, and it's not a brag thing, but a lot of people say they've been gaming since the 70s, and I will only say this: long term is pretty decent, but how much gaming is more important. And I would just say if you're going to run about your experience like I just did here, a lot of years means nothing. I haven't missed a month since I started in 1991 without running one session. And I have a mountain of experience, and it's hard to pass that off in a community where, sometimes I feel people think, nobody's wrong, nothing's wrong, so you can't talk about any negatives. And yeah, I get judged a lot for coming in that way, but I'm only trying to throw some wisdom around and some ideas. And yeah, I need to learn how to deal a little bit better with text.
Well, I think YouTube is a pretty relativistic community, and actually, I'm probably one of the most relativistic YouTubers out there. Like I said, I'll talk to anybody or discuss any really topic. And
as you're proving now.
Yeah. But people call me Mr. Switzerland sometimes. I don't know. I think it's just my personality outside of here too.
You're a great guy, Tim. I think you're a good DM. I've listened to your sessions. You have great advice on your videos. People should always be checking them out. You want to know what? I'm not concerned with people checking my videos out. It's not really my big gig. To me, if you don't say anything, you can't get your ideas out there. So I say stuff, but I have no giant expectation. That's where I stand. As far as you, I think you're in the same boat. But put it this way, anybody viewing this, Tim is going to put a lot more effort into this stuff than I am. And you show some appreciation by checking it out, because no matter what he's talking about, in the midst of it is great knowledge. And sometimes just generally the videos are just overall great knowledge, regardless to what product he might be telling you about or what topic he's talking about. So please check him out. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine now, I like to be able to say, and I am. There you go, Tim.
Well, thank you. I just want to say that, like I said, that one day I just sat here and I just soaked it all in, man. I just let it play. I whenever I could hear over the kids screaming and running around and stuff, that was great. I learned a good bit, I think, just that one day, just listening. So, and that's why I'm here. I want to try to experience new things and see things from different points of view, and maybe even adopt a different view if it's like something that is awe-inspiring. Like, wow, I've never done it that way, or I've never tried that technique, or whatever. And I appreciate. And this might be kind of funny maybe for me, but I appreciate people that have that confidence, that have that ability to say, no, here's my opinion. I really don't care what you guys think about it. This is what I've learned from experience. And I really think a lot of things from personal experience, have a lot of truth to them. It's like, it's hard to, like, if someone would come to me and say, well, I don't think that's right. It's like, well, I ran 4 campaigns, and in those 4 campaigns, this thing proved true in those 4 campaigns. You're really going to be hard-pressed to try to convince me otherwise because of that personal experience. But, maybe my experiences have been different. Like I said, I fumbled around in the dark trying to figure out what the rules were for years, whereas you had lots of people to interact with. So, you probably learned on like an exponential level right out the gate that took me like a long, slow climb, So I'm willing to listen to people, especially, like I said, if you have lots of time playing, you played lots of games. You just saying that you've run a game like every month, you've always been running things. That impresses me, because I've had little droughts, as I'd like to call them. Like I had a Magic the Gathering drought, and I had surprisingly a drought at college. I played like a small campaign of Vampire up there, but that was it. I couldn't find any other gaming. I always hear
the burnout.
I always heard all the time that college kids play, role playing games all the time, but I couldn't find a damn game up there. So, So yeah.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to extend this too much because I know you got the little one there, probably going to wake up any time now. But I would just say, yeah, totally hear where you're coming from. Geez, what were we on about there, Tim? I was being considerate, and then within my consideration about your daughter there.
Well, we were talking about. Well, she fell asleep again, but talking about how we started in the community, how we started playing, how we learned.
And this about you before I lose this line again. I think it's great how you came up, and you were a warrior coming through the system through trial and error. Personally, I think you're a great sponge. And I mean that in a positive sense. That's funny. So anybody who tries to read into that differently, no. Sponge, as in, I think a place like where I'm at you would have been right to be here. This is a place for you, or that type of community is right for you. And I think that's why you adapt so well into the community online, because I think you're a person that is meant to be in this type of surroundings. You're a sponge. You're ready to learn. You're ready to be humble. And, you come at it. I think everybody can't come at it the same way as everybody else, right? And I think everybody has their position in any community delivering message. Sometimes you need the people that are going to talk maybe more soft and rational on that end of it. And then you need some people that are willing to be forward and again, rational and come at it from that aspect. And we need both types of people. I think me and you come from different sides of the fence on that, where I'm a very forward person that I think, if there's just no others around doing it, there's a place for it. And I have my place in the community, right? And then I feel like you also have your place in the community, where people need to hear the message from their end at the same time, right? And some people need to hear it forward. Some people don't need to hear it in that way. They'll take they'll take it from you in a better way than they would from me. But some people just need to be shaken out of their, how could I say, mindset a little bit, right? And so I think me and you are very different people, at least on that end, as far as how we approach things in the community. But when it comes to positive things, I think me and you would say we come at it from the same end, because I'll be soft-spoken. I'll be nice and reasonable, where I think, there's no need to be forward. There's no need to debate or have conflict. But again, I'm not afraid to stir the pot, where that's just an area I think you leave alone. Even if you say negatives, you leave it alone. Yeah, on that end.
I've got a few where I dip my toes in the water of that. That's pretty much it. But I really, like I said, I respect. I don't know if like RPG bad boys, like that's probably like a really lame stereotype title, but like I've been friends with a lot of people like that some people would consider like rough around the edges, at least at first. And then once they, maybe their personality doesn't work well with your presentation or you as the messenger, but they eventually get the message like, wow, I don't know why I didn't like that person at first, but wow, this is a great channel, or, I've talked to Andrew, Wood WWAD a bunch about this. He said, yeah, it's like the Ender effect. People can't handle him at first. And then like a few videos later, like, oh, all right, okay. And even if you disagree with him, he's charismatic and these sorts of things. I don't really think I'm all that charismatic, but I just, like you said, I just try to I'm like a turtle. Yeah. I'm like an endurance running turtle. Like I'm still here. I
think it's based on perception. When you first come in viewing someone's videos, you might come in with a very different perception of what they could be, and you'll take what they're saying as something to describe, their personality, their opinions, where they're coming from. And then when you hear later, oh, well, they're coming at it from a different point of view. The personality that I assume they were coming at is different. And then when you go back and listen to that video again, you're like, oh, now that I know so much more about this person, I perceive this video in a much different way than I did before, right? It's now I can understand what he's saying, and I understand some of the areas where that person's coming from, because now I've heard them later in videos, right? And you find the person's maybe more reasonable, and etc. Stuff like that, where you go back with that different perception of them and go, oh, now I can take them in easier.
And YouTube, like I've said this many times before, but YouTube is a really strange thing for me, because when I first started, I really didn't expect to like it at all. It was sort of like I just did it on a whim, like this guy's doing it over here. What the heck? I got a webcam. I'll hit record. Worst case scenario, do it for a week and then I dump it off. But I'm really surprised with how I've connected with strangers all the way around the world who are into RPGs, and like a personal level. Like I don't know if it's the body language, the voice. Maybe you learn about them. You learn things about their lives. And you're like, I don't know. I feel like you said, I feel like I've made like legitimate friends, like just talking back and forth, making conversations with people, talking about things that we all love, even if we disagree at times. And I don't know, the medium of YouTube surprised me. It really did. It still does, and that's probably why I'm still here, because I don't have much of a social life these days, hanging out with kids. So it's a nice little avenue for me to get that the social need aspect of my personality.
Well, it's still that face-to-face thing, right? And that's what YouTube, I think, brings a different side to the role-playing community. Like if you go to the forums, the community is all over the place, and you come to YouTube and you find people more on the same page. I try to look at it like, imagine you were in a big place where all the games were going on, all the DMs from YouTube were there. You're going over every so often talking to them. In the morning, you all meet for coffee, coming in to get ready for your games, and you get to know people that there may be somebody from Japan and your table's next to theirs, right? I tried to sort of picture it from that point of view. But you're doing that on YouTube, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're coming up to that person from that other side of the world. Their table's right beside yours. And you're like, oh, wow. And we're communicating face to face. So even though to me it's over the internet or over the computer, however you like to look at it, it's still a personal thing. That's something close to being able to shake someone's hand in person. And I think that's why the community is as healthy as it is, right? I look at this community as a very positive thing. So when I come and see a negative or I go at it, it's for very positive reasons, because I'm like, man, well, I want to see these are the type of people with the type of energy you would want to have progressing what it is we do in general overall here, right? Like I said, what's the point of all the game talk if it's not for the game? Right? If it's just more about community than the game you're running, then what's the point of it? There's 50 million reasons to have a community, right? But the community here, at least they claim, many of the people making videos like yourself will claim we're here to better the hobby. Right? And to me, so gameplay is the hobby. Going to actually sit down and play the game, that's the thing we're all trying to progress into a further area, a better area for everybody. So everybody on some level, no matter what different taste or genres or whatever they're going to throw down, that everybody can have a good experience, right? And that's all anybody wants, is for everybody to have a good experience in their own way.
Yeah, my experience is everyone's passionate too. I mean, that passion probably varies from person to person, but I think you're very right. Like, that's the main goal of, I think, most YouTubers. Yeah, there's probably a few people that just want to be internet famous and get their face out there. That was never really my goal. Like subscription numbers. I'm actually surprised sometimes when I go to people's channels. Like, I wonder how many they have. Holy crap! They got like 10 times as many as I do. But it's not like an envy thing. It's just like, oh wow, good on them. Cool.
Yeah. I don't sit there and hold anything against those people. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
If you're on to be famous, that's your gig. But at the same time, if you're looking to progress something, how could I say? If there's something negative going on, somebody has to speak about it. And if I come in, I felt a few things were not, maybe for years have not been talked about, right, in a certain way or perceived in a certain way. And I think it's progressive to get rid of some of these negatives. Now, that's just my opinion, so I have to come at it from what I believe is true, right?
What I thought was interesting about what you told me was that, what about that person that is just learning, or what about that person that is going to take that video or idea and take it back home and try to run with it? Like you said, putting labels on things and trying to do things in specific ways. Whereas a lot of times, like, GMs are just generalists. We have to be, have our fingers in like 10 different pies at the same time and just really filter everything through that group you're running. That's your real audience is your group. And if it doesn't work for your group, well, you just throw it out the window. It's garbage. It's garbage for that group. Don't try it again. Don't try to force feed them whatever it is that you saw online if it doesn't work. But I think it's good that it's good to know what is out there so that you might be able to try a new thing or maybe try to use it. So
if explanation came better with it, but I would say with the DM type thing, my only argument is there's like a narrative DM is different for, like, it depends on who you're asking what that is, right? Simulationist DM, it depends on who you're asking what that means, right? So if there's not some commercial and good explanation that say, you know, if you're going to share that, hey, if you're a narrative DM, well, explain what a narrative DM is, and then remind the people, the newcomers that are listening that are getting ready to apply this to what they're doing. Because they may see you as credible, they'll see that other gamers take you serious, and your words become semi-gospel to these folks, right? And they'll take that back, and they'll try to practice, so I just do nothing but storytelling. Well, no, you do a few of the other things, but you might do more of this, right? Or you might do more simulation than these other things, but you'll still do them. Like, these are all still tools. Players will require you to have them. Players come in ignorant. They don't come in going, oh yeah, the DM doesn't know the rules or doesn't know what they're doing. They expect you to know what it is you're doing, and they expect you to be able to throw everything at them. And again, that's where it surprises me where players will get so touchy about anything that's, you know, required or demanded from them when you're talking to them. But the level of demand and requirement they expect from a dungeon master or game master when they come in is just incredible. And if you're only running one thing, that's going to get picked apart, right? They're going to notice. And that's for newcomers coming in. They will take this stuff and they're going to their new players going, hey, we just run story. And they're like, well, this isn't fun. Like, you mean, okay, so they walk out and they're trying to go out and there's the invisible wall. And that invisible wall gets created because that DM doesn't have all the tools to cover that invisible wall. And it's like, well, when you DM, you're going to do simulation, you're going to do narrative, you're going to do hack and slash, you're going to do everything in the game. You're going to railroad a bit here and there. Though, like I say, take the absolutes out of railroading. That would be my only negative throw at the railroading. So I would agree with anybody who says railroading under that absolutism that you're forced with no other opportunity into a situation is wrong, right? There should be a few. It just might be very challenging to get away from it. But railroading on any level that's just a tool. The illusion of choice. Again, you might use it in one session where they go and they end up at the same place the right turn would have took. In the next session, you should be able to have the tool that allows you to curve them off left without the illusion.
And well, here's a good point. Like in that aspect, like I told you, like I really try to stay away from those tools. I try not to do them like at all. But you got me thinking, you know, like, well, why do I have to throw it out of the toolbox? I could just keep it in there just in case. Like there might be an opportunity that it just seems to fit the situation. So why limit myself? So in that respect, like that'd be a perfect example of maybe something that I've learned from you. It's just like, you know, why cut your nose off to spite your face? So.
Well, exactly. Because if players always expect when they turn left in your game, they're going to go off the course. Well, when they finally get to the turn that takes them back to the right, they're going to be like, what? I didn't expect this. And you want to have that surprise, a balance in your game. If you have every tool, then you can use them when you want to use them. You don't have to use them all the time. Your game doesn't have to just be this one thing, right? And so when you DM, to me, there's DM types are going to confuse newcomers. That, to me, there is no such thing as a DM type. There is the Dungeon Master, or there is the Game Master, but that's it, and that's where it ends. Some of us will do a little bit more story or a little bit more simulation, I guess, if you want to cut it down to those details. But if you come in and the only thing you're really going to try to focus on doing is simulation, or just story, or just, or using the story to just railroad, to me, that's just incorrect DMing, and you're treating the game and your players.
I think at times we can kind of get carried away, like talking about game theory, where we're literally like a cabal of philosophers, like hanging out in the dank room somewhere. But that guy who's out there farming, like, he's in the real world. He's doing his thing. Like, he might have a philosophy, but he's not, waxing poetical about it. He's getting the job done. So there is that sort of, maybe dichotomy where, sometimes we're talking blah, 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 talking too much about all this crap, and labels, putting different labels, people have different definitions for various labels and organizational tools and camps, and you're in this box, I'm in that box, when really that GM that's out there at the table, 600 miles away or whatever, he's got to get the job done. And all that theory, if it really doesn't help him get the job done, then, like you said, it's sort of just like fluff. It's just, you don't really, it might be interesting to listen to or debate about, but when it really comes down to it, you don't need all that stuff, So that's a good point.
And imagine that the first experience is always the most important. And it can drive people away, a bad first experience. And I find it drives more than half the people away that have a bad experience. If they had that horrible experience coming in, well, remember, they came to this to have fun. And life might be crappy in other areas. There might be various reasons they just want to get out of that and have a good time. Instead, they have a crappy time. It's very negative, and it's like everything. It's like the other negatives in their life. And that first experience is the reason they're not going to come back to the game, right? And so to me, when it comes to the newcomers, how you communicate is just so important. And a lot of these guys forget that the theory starts from simple ideas, right? And that if you actually teach the base, that base of the theory, the simplicity of it, to the person, and then after they understand that, you start teaching them complexities through actual gaming experience, right? It's going to be better for them, right? They're going to learn that way. They come in with at least a simple approach. Hey, you got to know the rules. You got to know these things before you start the game. Start from there. And however you find yourself starting to tell stories, starting to put combat in, let yourself do what you're going to do and learn from it and come in and just have that experience. Start with the simple and work your way up and have someone giving you that good advice to make sure you know your rules, make sure you're prepped, make sure you're prepped to improvise. Maybe the concept of not putting required things in there so you don't get to bust your campaign at a mistake like that, right? Be open to various turnoffs, right? Explain it to them in a more simplistic way, and they'll be able to take that and use it in complex ways, right? They'll learn how to use it in complex ways, and they'll start understanding more about what you're talking about. But if you come right to a newcomer and go, let's start from the top down. So I'm going to explain to you all the complexity and ways you might not even understand, because you don't understand how we got to this opinion, right? You're not going to understand exactly everything. You read a narrative DM, and if you're not a professional storyteller or something, because we're amateurs, most of us that are coming to the gaming stuff, right? We're not people that are writing books all the time. We're not actors, right? So we're coming to it, like 90+% of us, in my opinion, come at it from this sort of amateur take on it, and we have to build up from there. We have to learn how to do these things, and it's a different format to begin with, so it's almost in its own way, it's going to teach you through experience the difference between it and, say, writing a novel, right? When it comes to storytelling. And to me, you gotta understand the simple and then move up from there. But I think most of the guys talking about the game theory, they think the simplistic stuff is just too boring to talk about, maybe. And you get some of these guys, like you said, are looking for views, looking for subscribers, right? And so they'll want to go to the game theory because, like you said, in that dark room, it sounds more impressive to them, right? They've made something, they become philosophers about something, a philosophy they've created, right? It's something that didn't exist before, but here it is now. And we're the top people at the top seats that understand it and can talk about it. And everybody else coming in is someone who might not get it, but come listen to me and you'll understand it. And I'm saying, no, I think most newcomers don't understand what it is they're talking about, and they'll try to go apply these things in the worst possible ways. Because if you're not informed, your common sense is based on how informed you are, right? So if you're not informed about the reasons why these theories work, like the simplistic reasons, well, then you will just try to run the theory and not understand the underlying base to it. And so you're not running it correctly. You're not understanding it correctly. It's one thing to know something, like reading it. It's another thing to understand it.
I never really liked the idea. Like I've had a few subscribers say things like not really use the word guru, but like along those lines. I'm like, no, yeah. Man, I'm really not. I'm just in fact, a lot of the times I'm here for self-exploration. I'm here to just improve me. Here's my ideas. If they're crap, shoot holes in them. Or I have some experience, but I try to come at it with like an open mind. Like, teach me. Like, seriously, if if what I have in my head is not the best way of doing something, why don't you introduce me to a different way of doing it? A different,
Well, yeah, I want to make it clear that I know your intent is not here to come on and talk about things that sound interesting so you can have more people subscribe. Actually, the way you do things just seems to, if it interests you, you're going to talk about it, and if people don't like it, they can move on.
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah.
And I'm with you. That's exactly the way I approach it. I'm going to say what I want to say, and if you don't like it, move on.
Like for instance, Empire of the Petal Throne is never going to be a popular a popular game, a popular setting, but it's something that really intrigues me. It's just too out there for a lot of people, but it just interests me. And I've just found that maybe this is why I've been around for so long. I do the things that interest me, and therefore it stays interesting. Because in the past, I've run games that I didn't really like or enjoy, and I found that as a GM, I didn't do the prep as much, or my heart wasn't in it. So, when I came doing YouTube videos, I just wanted to make sure that my heart was in it, that I was still interested. And I've had times when I wasn't sure if I was going to come back or not, my heart wasn't at the time, so I took a break. But I always come back because I always have more ideas, or I'll watch one of your videos, and I'm like, oh wow, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, I'll get a thought in my head from some other video, and I just have this little notepad, talk about this sometime,
Not even about the topic that the video is about. You're just this whole other thing has come up from, listening to that video. Oh my.
Yeah.
No, when I say with a guy like you or anybody who feels that burnout feeling, I try to remind people, understand that at the moment you feel like that, it's just a moment. This is my take on it anyway, right? And that even though you feel like that, next week you might not. But if you give up on this because of the feeling today, you might not bother to be open about it next week. And you might leave it go for months, right? But if you just go, hey, you want to know what? You tell yourself as you're feeling that. You want to know what? Maybe I need a day or two off of this. I need to stop thinking about this. We'll see where it goes. And, I'll listen to videos every so often. I'll do whatever I want to do. And next week, that feeling will have gone. And now, because I've left myself open to still, not rubbing it away, right? You might go back to the gaming. It's just, burnout for me is like this when it comes to gaming. I don't feel like playing Monday, so I'm going to play Wednesday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to me, I just know at the moment, I might even feel oh man, I have those moments. I don't now mentally because I know how to control that, right? But I felt, over the years, I've had moments where it's just maybe I just need a break from this. This is maybe just too much, right? And then get lucky enough at those moments in my life to have either people around me or myself telling me, hey, you want to know what? You're just feeling like that now. Who says that's going to be how you feel next week? And nothing's forever. You know what I mean? So even if it feels like it's going to be a forever feeling, maybe I just won't game no more. Even if it feels like that, I'll try to just put that aside. And I find by the next week or a couple of days later, I'm ready to start thinking about it again, right?
Just give it time. And I've talked to people that used to have YouTube channels. And video making is different than gaming. It is. It's like a second, a subsidiary hobby, sort of. You're talking about gaming, but it's sort of its own thing. Sort of like world building is, yes, it's, but it could be its own sort of subsidiary, related hobby, I guess you could say.
Like a big open con.
Yeah. But I've talked to people who just, like I said, they get burned out, they take everything down, delete all their videos, and then a week later, they're like, oh, that was stupid, I regret that so much. So whenever I do feel like that, I just, I take a break, and then, like I said, keep the possibility open that, you know what, maybe in a week or two, I'll be into it again. And as time has proven, that's usually the case with me. I just, there's something that inspires me.
Well, that's it. And if you get to the feeling maybe I need to be more active. Maybe I need to make more videos to have people keep checking it out or something in that vein. I know a lot of people, even if they're not worried on the front of it, just like yourself, that would just say, if you don't like it, move on, might still want to be active in the community. And they're not looking for viewers on that level. They're looking to show that they're being active, that they don't want to be forgotten about, right? They want to sort of keep some type of thing going on. I say don't bother. People are going to keep looking at your videos forever if they want to. And if you make friends, those friends, they're not going to go away. If they're still there, they're going to be there. Yeah. So don't feel like you need to do videos. I see a lot of people that will put up videos that just seem like such a waste. Like,
like update videos are a pretty good example of that. Like, oh, I haven't been doing one for a while, and I mean sometimes they're cool. If like you get to learn a little bit about this person, but if it's like you said, if it's just to put out a video, like I'm gonna put out videos every Wednesday. I've never really understood that. I don't get that. I've never really subscribed to that. Whenever I get around to making it and putting it up, that's my schedule. So.
You lose credibility when you're always trying to cover something up. Like, how could I say you're going to sit there and say, yeah, I'm doing an update to say I'll be doing videos every Wednesday, and I'm like, well, let's see if you do videos every Wednesday. Am I confident that you're going to? Not right now. You're going to have to prove to me that that's what you're willing to do, because the last time I seen a video was a year ago. And so if you're trying to live up to getting on that active scale, well, then you'll get people that will, okay, well, fair enough. And if you suddenly don't, right, which happens to a lot of them, if you suddenly just disappear again, what, the second time you come, or third time you come back, people are going to, believe what you're saying. Save yourself some face, right? Be honest. That's my opinion, right? Is just come out and say, hey, you want to know, would like to be more active, don't have the time, haven't been inspired, but here comes the video. And you say that at the start of something where you have been inspired to say something, right?
Yeah.
Like an update video, like you would say, where there's something to actually say in the video, more than just say, I'm going to make videos every Wednesday, right? Well, then, fair enough. Come at it like that, and I'll sympathize. I'll be like, yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. But you're just saying, hey, I'm just doing it when I feel like it. Again, I'll respect that in the same, process, right? Fair enough. You're going to save face with people. If you start telling people you're going to do something and then you don't do it, you lose face. You lose respect.
I think people probably at that time they're making it really do believe they're going to have time and they're going to be motivated. But like being burned out, you could be motivated and then it can just go away. So, so I guess I've kind of been in that place too, where, like I'm trying to get myself psyched up, trying to get pumped up for things, and then the next week, the the bottom falls out of the world, and it's like, oh well, that's not going to happen, So yeah, I just try to tell people, don't stress about it, just do what you love, put them out when you can. It's going to relax,
that way. Yeah, if you're not thinking I have to make a video, this is how life is. If you're not looking for it, it will be there. If you're looking for it, you won't find it.
And if you think that way, it's probably like a chore. I have to do it on Wednesday. I have to clean up my room every Wednesday. Just don't. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too laid back at times, but that's the way I look at it.
It's only casual video making and community video making, so the pressure, the requirement for every Wednesday to me seems a little silly. Now again, if you're looking for subscribers, the way you approach it is going to be different, and I have no qualms with it, right? If you want to do it every Friday because it's a video set you want to do for subscribers, go ahead. But if you're someone like us, don't bother. And
I think it's kind of liberating to be sort of like that. Like you're like, I really don't care.
Right?
It's like, at some point, that having that many subscribers, I think, becomes work because it's really kind of hard to keep up with the comments at times, and because I really try to interact with everyone that pays attention. Oop. Looks like I might have to get going here, buddy.
I hear you. Last thing I'll state is famous people will always tell you after they become famous, you don't want to be famous. Oh, hello? Oh, okay, you're muting because...
yeah, hold on a second. How about this? How about you say some final words here, and we'll close this up, because she's crying.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. We were a little rambling and all over the place there, and if you got any grievances, go ahead and comment. If you got anything good to say, comment as well. Subscribe to Tim. Take care of yourselves.